A 5-year-old student with autism was supposed to be at Capitol Elementary School this morning, but was instead left alone on a bus for hours.
On Thursday, January 5th, 2023, in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, 5-year-old Seayontai Banks Jr. was put on the school bus by his great-grandmother, Pleasant Herbert. After she put him on the school bus, it was a few hours later that she received a notification from Seayontai's teacher that he had not made it to school. It was in that moment that Pleasant Herbert panicked and began to ask questions.
Never made it to school. So at that time, I called her. I'm like, what you mean he never made it to school? Because I put him on the bus this morning.
His great-grandmother, Pleasant Herbert, found out he hadn't made it to school when she got a notification from his teacher.
Man, I'm freaking out.
After Pleasant got that notification, she began to panic and ask questions like, what do you mean he didn't make it to school? Especially knowing that she had put him on the bus earlier that morning. After learning that Seayontai had never made it to school, she immediately went to the transportation department to find out what happened.
I'm crying. I'm telling somebody, like, y'all need to find my baby. He didn't make it to school. I don't know what bus he's on. He's not on the bus he was supposed to be on.
After Mrs. Herbert found out that Seayontai had not made it to school, she immediately went to the transportation department. Once she arrived, she found out that the bus got stuck in the mud and students were then transferred to another bus. It was in this moment that she believes that Seayontai remained on the original bus and was asleep at the time the other students got off the bus.
Where she found out the bus she put her child on got stuck in the mud and students were transferred to another bus at Capitol Middle School. From there, it's believed Banks remained on the original bus, asleep while it was taken out of the mud, then back to the bus depot to be washed, and back to the bus driver's house.
Now, although this was an emergency situation, this story never should have to be told. The truth is, the bus driver should have double-checked that all students got off the bus just to be on the safe side. Once the communications director, Ben Limoni, discussed the possibilities of what could have happened, it seems as though he used this emergency as a justification as to why Seayontai was left behind, although he did mention that the bus driver and the aide would be disciplined and would also have to take additional training.
So the question for us right now is why the bus driver didn't check for any students. Now, you can imagine this was an emergency situation. This was certainly an exception. The bus was stuck in the mud, and their first inclination was to get the students off the bus and to safety and onto their schools.
So with all due respect, I would like to challenge a few of his statements. So let's quote them. Quote, "You can imagine this was an emergency situation, certainly an exception. The bus was stuck in the mud. The first inclination was to get the students off the bus," end quote. Now, I do agree that this was an emergency situation, but that doesn't excuse the bus drivers for not double checking every student that gets on the bus. I understand that some situations can be heightened. A lot of times we may not think straight, we may just panic, but at the end of the day, it's ultimately the bus driver's job, their responsibility for their students when they're on the bus. So I don't really see this as an excuse because something could have happened to Seayontai, but thank God that it didn't. But ultimately, I will give him credit for admitting that the bus driver did make a mistake and that the situation will be corrected.
You know, I can understand that parents would be concerned given this situation. We want them to know that our bus drivers, all of our staff, are trained well, and this is certainly an anomaly. It's a mistake, and it will be corrected.
The bus driver and aide will be disciplined and ordered to redo training. Herbert said.
Overall, Mrs. Herbert said she is thankful her little guy is okay. She added that for him to be asleep as long as he was, which was 4 hours on the bus, she says that she is thankful that it wasn't too cold and it wasn't too hot, and that everything worked out for the best, although this situation is not.
She's just thankful her little guy is okay.
For him to be asleep that long on a bus, unnoticed, thank God it wasn't cold. Thank God it wasn't burning up hot. He was asleep with a coat. He got a jacket on with fur in the inside. So he sleep on a closed-in bus.
So now I want to share my thoughts. 5-year-old Seayontai Banks Jr. is 5 years old. He's autistic and he's also nonverbal, which means that he is a part of a very vulnerable population. To the bus drivers, it is our responsibility to make sure that if an incident happens or if an emergency occurs, to make sure that each student exit the bus in a safe manner. It won't take you no more than a second to go through and make sure that everybody gets transferred like they're supposed to. I'm so glad that this story ended the way that it did, where he's safe and at home. His great-grandmother, Miss Herbert, also mentioned that she will be taking him to school moving forward, because I can only imagine the trauma she faced knowing that he was missing and getting a text message from his teacher that he wasn't there. I hope that everyone learned something from this story, and thank you so much for listening. Bye.